Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, flying solo. So I'm just doing this episode because it was announced on Tuesday evening, that Draymond Green has been suspended for Game 3 for, his stepping on, whatever you want to call it, on Domantas Sabonis. Joe Dumars, his name was on the official release, and he, I'm a little incredulous right now that Draymond got suspended. To me, it was one of those things where, more so than anything, you don't, as the NBA front office, you don't want to affect a series like this in this way, because you're essentially just saying like, okay, you're down 2-0, and then here's your suspension, and that affects series. I mean, we saw this in 2016. It's funny for me because I saw on Tuesday, Shams, he tweeted out that it's unlikely that Draymond would get suspended, and I read it really quickly, and I thought it said he was getting suspended. It was likely he was getting suspended. And so I tweeted that out and I messaged people. And then I looked at it again and I was like, oh, it says unlikely. So I was like, cool. But then a few hours later, it's like he's getting suspended. So I was like, wait, what? Did I read this wrong again? I don't think it warranted a suspension, especially with the stakes being what they are. It said something about his past history of unsportsmanlike behavior, misconduct, whatever. But I get it to some extent, because hey, Adam Silver was in the building, and all the extracurriculars after the incident, when Draymond was goading on and taunting the crowd and getting into it, shouting matches with fans. That doesn't play well in front of Adam Silver, especially when it's live and he's in the arena seeing it all play out in real time with his own eyes. So I can see that. And it's unfortunate, if, Draymond had just kind of like chilled and not tempted fate, perhaps this wouldn't have happened. But he is who he is. And we know that fire is what makes him who he is, as he's always said these past, 10, 11 years. And I mean, it was funny for me because I was like, man, imagine. The series isn't over yet, but I was like, imagine if the Warriors were down 3-0 or 3-1 and he was going to miss the next game. There's a chance that could have been his last basketball play in a Warriors uniform. Thankfully, it's only 2-0, and win or lose, there's at least one more game that Draymond would play in Chase Center. But, it really, really puts the Warriors' backs against the wall. So, whereas before this series started, we were like, feeling confident that this team had at least shown enough to get past the first round, that they could get a 1-1 split. And then when that didn't happen, it's like, okay, go next game, come back, hold serve at home, even it up 2-2, and then best out of 3, right? That's the psychology of these kinds of series. But now it's like, okay, you don't have your heart and soul, your defensive mastermind quarterback, whatever you want to call it. And, we'll see. I mean, there's a handful of guys on this team who haven't performed as we would have hoped they would have in this series, but benches don't play as well on the road, especially in the playoffs. So you bring it back to Chase Center and you got to figure something out. You got to figure something out. You have, their bench right now. It's Dante DiVincenzo, Jonathan Kuminga, Jordan Poole, Moses Moody, JaMychal Green, and yes, Anthony Lamb. So some of those guys are going to have to make up the difference somehow, some way for Draymond Green's absence. We saw last season, that 3-month stretch when Draymond was out, how that affected the team last year. And it's tough. It's tough without him. But you're at home, it's the playoffs, and you're going to need basically at least a few of those guys to really, really, really step up. And you're going to need, at least two dudes to have excellent shooting nights. Clay, Steph, Jordan Poole breaks out of it. Jonathan Kuminga, maybe his athleticism, because he's getting a chunk of minutes. He'll get 25 minutes, hopefully. Actually, I take that back. There could be a scenario where Kurt plays him and he doesn't play well initially, and the Warriors get down by 8, and you don't see Kuminga until maybe the second half again. That could happen. But ideally, Kuminga shows us something, right? Because he is right now a power forward. And if you run him out at home, just hopefully he can give Kerr enough that Kerr leaves him out there, right? Like, I would want to give him a longer leash personally, but of course I'm not the coach. So, hey, who knows? Maybe this is a game where Kuminga shows us that he's ready to take a step forward, right? Like, he hasn't played well in the first 2 games and he hasn't gotten the minutes. So maybe he can rev his engines a little bit and really, really affect the game in a way that we haven't seen so far. That being said, maybe you run out lineups with him, Wiggins. Maybe you go super small and just try to outscore them like crazy. Maybe put Lamb in there just to have a thicker body. Maybe Moody for rebounding, JaMychal Green just to just to foul the hell out of guys. But on the flip side, you have the Kings, and as we've seen, benches don't travel as well. So will Alex Len, even with Draymond out and smaller team out there in front of him, will he be able to get off the way he did in the first 2 games? Will Malik Monk shoot as well? Will Trey Lyles have that big of an effect? So these are things. This is why you play the game. And to me, there's a chance. You look at this and it's like, it's not looking good, right? You could just see if this game trends the way the previous 2 go, more or less, then that's a 3-0 deficit, right? But we'll see how it plays out. Some guys will have to play really inspired, out of their minds. The Warriors will have to show that they have this, extra gear that we honestly haven't really seen too many times this season, especially without Draymond. So in a way, this series and this team against the Kings so far has looked more like the Warriors versus the Raptors series than any other series throughout this dynasty, right? If you think about it, the Warriors in the playoffs, in the finals, they've lost to the Cavs and they've lost to the Raptors. When they lost to the Cavs, again, that was Draymond was involved with a suspension in that one, but they just couldn't hit shots. You never felt like they were outmatched, but it was a question of some excellent performances by Kyrie Irving and LeBron James and just the tide turning, stuff like that. But you never felt that it was like, they got nobody there who can support the team. Against the Raptors, it was one of those things where Durant was out, Clay was out, and Steph kind of looks around and it's like, who's there to help him out? And then when Clay came back, it felt like they were making that move. That game 6 where Clay went out with the ACL, that felt like one of those magical games until the injury, right? So they would need something similar to that, because right now it's like Steph and Clay and Draymond were, even though they had a ton of turnovers and they were at fault a lot for that game 2 loss, especially, it's like they got to look around and say, who is going to step up? and they can't look around and just be like, I got no help. That being said, it's like no disrespect to the 2019 bench guys, but DiVincenzo, Kuminga, Poole, Moody, like that's not Jonas Jerebko. That's not Alfonso McKinney. That's not Quinn Cook. So they have the ability, the potential to play up. It's just, will they? And that's the critical thing. Like, what is in the heart of this team? You know, do they have it? They're at home against a Kings team that is playing them really well, that is well coached, well strategized, but this is not the 96 Chicago Bulls, right? This is not a dynasty team. Can you bring it? So that's the challenge, because if they go down 0-3, that's pretty much it. You know what I mean? They'd have to win 4 games in a row, and they would have to win 2 games in Sacramento. The Warriors are not a good road team, and I believe they only won 4 in a row 2 or 3 times this season at most. So that would be an impressive feat, but man, that's round 1, right? So I think this is not the finals. It's not the Western Conference Finals. So we're seeing what the Warriors have right now, and you know, take it one game, one series at a time. But at the end of the day, this is not a good development. But you know, when you're tested, you know how you react to adversity and all that stuff, all those platitudes and sayings. Then we'll see. Then we'll see. You know, if they lose 0-3 and then they lose the series, you know, maybe it's a gentleman's sweep, and you know, then there's the whole conversation about what happens to this franchise and the guys on it and the contracts and all that stuff moving forward. You know what I mean? A lot of thoughts on that. I haven't wrapped my head around that since maybe, you know, a couple months ago, since before even Gary Payton came back into the lineup. So that's a whole nother conversation that a lot of us will have if the Warriors flame out in this series. But it's going to be high drama. You know what I mean? It's not going to be, I don't expect a blowout by the Kings, but you know, if it is, then that's unfortunate, because you want to see the Warriors scratch and claw and brawl for their lives. And to me, the drama is just ratcheted up, you know, because I felt like you could kind of, you know, if Draymond was playing and they were whole, that there would be a good chance that they would take game 3. But now it's like, now you put that question out there. And I mean, I'm sure the Kings, like, they're looking at this like, hey, this is our chance. We could put a nail in the coffin in this dynasty, you know, and put a nail in the coffin in this series and really cement ourselves as like, finally, you know, Vivek would be like, oh my gosh, I finally not only have a team that's better than the Warriors, but I beat the Warriors and ended them. So a lot is at stake. You know, there's probably other things I haven't thought of yet, but a lot is at stake in terms of storylines for this game 3. And, you know, we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to be really, really interested. And I kind of wish the game was tonight, because I can't wait to see it, just to see the narrative of this whole thing unfold and see how guys rise up, how they compete. You know what I mean? Like, this is why we watch sports. You know, we don't watch it for BS suspensions, but, you know, you like to see how people perform and respond in these tough, difficult situations. So anyway, that's all I got for now. I'll see you after game 3. Fingers crossed.